Okay, so Ozzy Carter, I'll do roll call. Ozzy Carter,
Present.
Rena Moore,
Present.
LaTanya Thompson. All board members are present to start the meeting officially.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome. We are Program and Services Standing Committee for CAB, Community Advisory Board that's under Community Corrections Partnership, CCP. Let's set the table, board members, and for those in the audience with some housekeeping items. And I'm going to kind of like breeze through some of these because currently we have no one on a phone as I can see. So for those in the public, please keep your participation on mute. And we will hear comments first from board and then from the public by raising your hand. Our purpose, Programs and Services purpose, is to advise justice reinvestment and protect community investments. And some of our responsibilities are: 1, we recommend program-related policy around both existing and new funding opportunities with a focus on evidence practices, both locally, regionally, and nationally. We're looking for innovation and for recommendations for implementation. Secondly, we engage providers to educate CAB and/or committee members about their work, outcomes, needs, and recommendations. Thirdly, we promote a structure for and implementation of a comprehensive needs assessment for the county's reentry populations. What it is, what is working and what is not working, and what's needed. And this is to inform future program recommendations and funding allocations. Last but not least, we participate in program and services related RFP development, that's requests for proposal, process and panels by assignment from committee chair and/or CAB overall. We are grateful to those who are members of this committee and so appreciated for their time commitment. And now to our agenda. Well, we've introduced, I think we need to, I guess it's first program and services members introduction. Okay.
So I can call each person if you like.
Yes, please, Monique.
Okay, so Ozzy, go ahead and introduce yourself as the chair.
Ozzy Carter, Chair, Program and Services. This is my 3rd year as a CAB board member.
Okay, and LaTanya Thompson is our new vice chair. Please introduce yourself. You're on mute.
Good morning, LaTanya Thompson, vice chair, and this is my 1st year.
And Rena Moore is our recorder.
Hi, I'm Rena Moore. I'm the recorder. As Monique said, this is my 1st year.
Thank you. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Monique Tate with the Office of Reentry and Justice, and I can call on the other 2 people present if you like, Ozzy.
Yes, please.
Okay, Jill Ray.
Good morning, Jill Ray with the Supervisor Candace Anderson's office, District 2.
And Shayla Bonner.
Hi, everyone. Shayla Bonner with the Safe Return Project, former CAB member.
Thank you all. And now we'll move to announcements. First of all, we'll have announcements first. Are there any announcements? And if not, we'll move to public comment on any item under the jurisdiction of the Community Advisory Board and not on this agenda. Hearing none, we'll move to the approval of the minutes from our last Program and Services Subcommittee from November 17th. And for the record, even though we possibly were not in attendance, if we have reviewed the minutes, we are allowed to take a vote. We don't have to abstain because of not being in the room at that particular time. Basically, I believe since this is procedural, anyone that has fully read the minutes from November 17th can make a motion for the approval of those minutes. And a member can second.
I could do the motion.
I second it.
Thank you. And Monique, will you call the roll?
And are there any comments pertaining to the note of the record of action? So it looks like none, so I'll do the vote now. So it was motioned by Rena and seconded by LaTanya. So Ozzy Carter,
Aye.
Rena Moore,
Aye.
LaTanya Thompson,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. Our next item up is to discuss membership at a glance. And that is attachment 2, page 4.
So I have it displayed now, Ozzy, on page 7. So this is basically here just to show every one of the new landscape of the board members and the subcommittees, and if anyone has questions. So what I can say is that we did this at the retreat, and the outreach and community engagement at that time, they did not have a chair. So Crawford acted as the temporary chair, but they nominated and voted on a chair. So now Evan Decker is the new chair. So I didn't update it yet because this is how it was posted publicly, but I wanted to at least notify you all that Evan is now the chair of outreach and community engagement. And the other subcommittees remain the same from the retreat.
Well, thank you for that information, Monique. And I would also like to stress to the members that if by chance you have other interests, and to be really aware that you can attend any of the subcommittee meetings. And that's what I would like to encourage so that we can become more proactive and see how we intersect the other committees. Are there any questions?
I'd like to add to that, Ozzy. You're absolutely right, because a lot of the work that you all are doing does kind of intersect with the other committees. And I know, Ozzy, you did a really good job of being present at programs and services, although you were a member of policy and budget, but you were able to bring ideas and services to that committee and just allow the other board members to, first of all, understand what you were bringing forward and weigh in on it. So I'm glad you brought that up to the 2 new board members so that they can know that all of you are a part of these committees as a whole, but just individually, many of you are on the different subcommittees, but the work still is for the overall cap.
And I'm really excited about the program and services. I was speaking with one of our new members, Ms. Rena Moore, earlier prior to the meeting starting, that because she's new on the board, but what she brings is a wealth of information about programs that are actually out there. And I'm going to also ask you, LaTanya, if there's some things or programs that you're really vested in, that you know, parts of, whether a cohort or just, you know, familiar with, that feel free to bring that to our meeting so that we can actually at some points even make various presentations to the full CAB, and definitely have discussions and bring these organizations before our committees so we can have firsthand information about these organizations that might not be currently a part of our CBO roster. Is there any other conversation in regards to our membership outline? And I really want to thank Monique for simplifying this, because it's kind of really great to have on hand when we're in our meeting, but also outside of the meetings, because we can get a sense of what districts everyone is involved in and kind of like connect the dots. And for me, the thing that I really liked about the retreat was the fact it was very simple, but it was very informative, was the map and how we're broke down in the different districts and who represent in the different board of supervisors, the supervisors that represent those districts. And I'm pretty new as far as being involved in our activities, but knowing across the board that we're not restricted to where we live. I live in Pittsburgh, but I'm finding that West County and other counties have a lot of programs that I'm seeing being made visible just by going to some events outside of my comfort zone to see what other areas are actually doing and what they can bring to the table to help us as a board. When we're looking at funding, when we're looking at innovation and creativity as far as programs and services, we'll be able to have a listing of individuals that, you know, when it's time, that if they're ready, up and ready for the RFP process with the request for proposal, they'll be able to actually benefit, because a lot of those individuals are serving the populations that we represent, the reentry populations. And I'm very adamant about the creativity being brought in and really making us aware of the programs, not even in our county, even in our respective areas, what's going on across counties. We all need to know who these CBOs are, what they're bringing to the table, and how we can best support them.
And Ozzy, I'd like to add one more thing. I just thought of it. I would like to make mention that policy and budget, which is tomorrow, they used to meet at 10:30 to 12 noon, but at the retreat, they agreed to change their time to 11 to 12:30.
Okay.
So you'll notice it's there updated on this particular sheet. And you know, I know that people that generally have attended that meeting, I just want to mention that it's been changed to 11 to 12:30, and it's actually tomorrow. So yeah.
And just for my 2 cents about policy and budget, I was there on that subcommittee for 2 years, and I have to really confess, it's a confession. The reason why is because that was the only day that my schedule allowed me a subcommittee meeting. I had no idea of what I was getting myself into, but the short of the long story is that I learned a lot. I learned about the finances. I learned about how things were constructed, how COLA and how things are applied, and how CAB as a board collectively, the monies, how they're allocated. And it's a challenge, but to really understand the nuts and bolts, because the bottom line is our primary function is to oversee the AB 109 funding. and to actually see it in the layers and how it goes out to the county and other agencies that are part of this big circle and the monies. But then also to know how much money is there and how that money is being best spent, but also how we can further utilize funding to kind of do some improvements, things that are really, important. And there's going to be a lot of new things on the forefront, and just, keeping us up to date. And it's a trail because, and that's the other process. I don't want to spoil the fun of, but I'm just kind of like throwing it out there that policy and budget is a good place to drop in and see how things go in that flow.
Yeah. And I want to add to that as well, Ozzy, I know that you said it was new for you. But although it was new for you, you were really active in, discussing funds. I know you attended a board meeting where you spoke up about some funding issues. And I think when we learn more, we do more. You become an active part of the process. And although you went independently as a community member, but because you are a CAB board member, your voice is your voice is heard and it's respected. And I think that it really empowers the members to become a part of the process overall. So you did a lot. And there was a lot of, like I said, intersecting between programs and services and policy and budget. And it really does bode you well to be able to attend some of the other subcommittees just to kind of get a feel of what's going on, to see the similarities, I would say. And they're recorded. So even if you're not able to attend in person, you can definitely review the recordings once they're posted.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any questions from LaTanya or Rena moving forward?
No questions or anything like that. I'm gonna try to attend the budgeting committee meeting tomorrow to see how that works and stuff. I've been to a couple before, but yeah, it'd be nice to go to some of the meetings this new year.
Thank you. They'll welcome you. And the thing about it is we're all learning, and we have help, we have people who are really there to assist the process because we are from the community, and we volunteering our time and our energy. But what we bring with the seat that we bring our life experience. And that is very, very valuable. Our life experience, our lived experience is one of the most valuable things that you can have. And I find that for myself, when I go into these rooms and I'm candid, I'm authentic, I don't beat around the bush. I'm formerly incarcerated. I'm in recovery. I understand the plights. I understand the homelessness, but for the grace of God, there goeth I. And so who could better advocate for others but those who have been in the same positions at some points in their life and have been able to change those trajectories and become who it is that they're intended to be, but most of all, to become the advocates for those who really are in need of advocacy at this time. And there are no mistakes. I just believe everything is just happens as it should happen. And those of us, we're here and we're valued, we're valuable, we're assets. They want us, they need us. They need our voice because they want us. They know that it can't work without those who have the lived experience to come and say what didn't work, what could work, and what we can probably do, because we've been there. So it takes a minute to kind of overcome, for me, those feelings of, how would I like to say it, the imposter in the room. And I'm taking a page out of Cal Berkeley's repertoire as an alumni, always feeling that I was not good enough to have been at that prestigious college, but knowing now that I added so much flavor to the great gumbo that they create people to come out into the community, to work diligently within that community and to change and be the change that we would like to see. So I'm getting off my platform and I'm gonna move on. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna take a look at is to review program and services charter. And that charter, if someone would like to go down and read it, share in the reading, sometimes it's good to hear it. Okay, well, the name of the committee. The name of this CAB standing committee shall be the Programs and Services Committee. The purpose is to advance justice reinvestment and protect community investments. This will be achieved through proactive and reactive tasks, including development of reports, informing and presenting to CAB, CCP, and the Board of Supervisors on any committee findings and recommendations, engaging service providers and stakeholders, promoting and supporting increased use of community needs assessments, promoting evidence-based practices and participation in other county committees, offices as assigned by the CAB. Now that was a lot. Okay, number 3, the responsibilities. To recommend program-related policy around both existing and new funding opportunities with a focus on evidence practices, both local, regional, and national. Innovation and recommendations of implementation. Publish periodic reports on existing programs and services. Engage providers to educate CAB and/or committee members about their work, outcomes, needs, and recommendations. Promote a structure for and implementation of a comprehensive needs assessment for the county's reentry population. What's working, what's needed to inform future program recommendations, funding allocations. Participate in program services related to the RFP development. You know what? I read this. I'm halfway through it, I'm reading it, but I'm going to finish. Participate in program and service related RFP development process and panels by assignment from committee chair and/or CAB overhaul. As directed by the CAB, assign committee members to serve as formal liaisons to county programs, offices, and agencies. Other responsibilities and functions to advance the committee's purpose. So looking at our charter, if my understanding is correct, we're tasked to agree on this and all of the things that the specifics within it. Also, if there are any things that we could add?
Yes, you can add it or change it, or, if you agree with what you're doing. And since this is your first meeting as a subcommittee, what we will likely do is continue to have the charter present just to review it. And if you find that things have changed over time, we can definitely update it because it's in draft form. And I think last year we started a policy or rule that we will add the charter as well as the work plan to every agenda item. So that really is the reason for it being here. But also I want to say, Ozzy, is we have 2 more guests who have joined. And at some point, if you'd like to ask them to introduce themselves, it's Pedro Bernal, and Tiani. So just whenever it is appropriate within the meeting.
Well, absolutely. We can go ahead and have those introductions. We can take a pause.
Okay. Pedro, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, how's everybody doing? My name's Pedro Bernal. I'm from the Richard Boyd Fellowship. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
Thank you. And Tiani?
How y'all doing? I'm a 2023 graduate as well, Richard Boyd Fellowship, and I'm shadowing today. And I'm just here to collect notes.
Well, welcome to you both. I hope this is an informative meeting and that you take a lot away from the meeting. And please come back and share more of yourself with us.
Will do.
Thank you. So are there any questions related to our charter? And as Monique said, we'll keep it posted and review it at some other time, but it's a part of the staples here for our committee and the things that why we're here and what it is that we're set out to do. With that being said, we'll move down to item number 6, and that's to develop a 2023 work plan. And that is attachment 4, and Monique has it on our screen. And this is the work plan from 2022. So it is now our responsibility to take a look at these items and reassign individuals who would like to be a part of that specific task, and individually or collectively. Lila Blanchard is no longer with us. I'm walking in those big shoes. They're awful big shoes to fill, but I'm up for the challenge. So I guess we'll get started with the initiative. Our first initiative is advocacy and support of CAB policy platform. And what that consists of is undertake and brainstorm priority projects and advocacy. And those bulleted points that are included here are things that we either continue with, add on to, or add more to. And with Monique's help, she'll guide me through this little journey here. So the 2022, their primary was to expanding housing resources within the county for reentry beyond AB 109, support best practices, program models, governance structures, and make recommendations. Also under that specific is expanding restorative justice within the county, support best practice program models, governance structures, and make recommendations. And thirdly, collaborate with other external boards, committees, or work groups. Example would be Measure X, CAB, Community Advisory Board. And the timeline for these items is ongoing. And if
So Ozzy, I can add if you'd like me to add to this. So I know what the previous committee did on Tuesday, the outreach and community engagement. They reviewed it as you just did, and they determined if this is something that you want to continue as an initiative, or if you want to, like you stated earlier, add to it, make any changes. And also they really did look at the timeline to determine if it really is ongoing or if it should be focused on from, say, January through June, so they did a really good, they had a really good conversation about looking at the initiative, looking at the subtasks and benchmarks, and determining the timeline. Is it realistic to have it ongoing like the whole year, or should it be focused on at the beginning of the year? mid-year or toward the end of the year, and then also looking at the persons responsible. It could be a group effort. Everyone could take a part of that, or it could be one person. So last year, it just so happens that Lila took part. This was like a focus that she would bring back to the committee of what's happened, since the previous meeting throughout the year. And so you can take that approach, or you could just take that initiative off the table completely, and the three of you could come up with a new initiative. And even though this says it's a voting item, you likely won't finish this, so it doesn't have to be voted on. So like with outreach, what they did, OCEC, is they decided that they went over items, and then they said that each person individually could email me to update the new draft work plan. And then at the next meeting, it'll probably be a little bit more concise as far as where they're going towards it, and they'll complete it, and then they would probably likely vote upon it at next month's meeting. So you could take that approach as well.
Well, since I'm new on this specific committee, I'm looking for support from the other board members as far as any of these tasks that's on the table, specifically the ones that were worked on last year. If anyone is interested in volunteering, if it's a passion or if it's something that you really want to work toward, now is the time to claim that.
Well, I'd like to work on expanding housing resources. Sorry, my voice is going out, but expanding housing resources and stuff. That's really important. Like I kind of do homeless advocacy work on my own free time. So yeah, that's something I like to participate in.
Okay. And I kind of also would like to assist expanding the restorative justice within the county. I think that is something that is needed. Definitely the DA is working toward the various issues with youth, but I think that we need to look beyond the youth and come up with some other strategic planning around restorative justice models for our communities.
I'm also interested in that and have filled out the application either mid or late December to be part of that restorative justice.
Tanya, can you repeat that? You said mid or late December?
Yes, I filled out the application and I emailed it to their office as well as mailed in a hard copy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think what she's speaking of is the Neighborhood Restorative Partnership. Right. We can talk about that offline, and I can give you some contact information. Okay, perfect. What I was speaking of on the restorative aspect is that we still need to champion other practices, restorative justice practices platforms. I see Jill Ray has her hand up. Go ahead, Jill.
I was just going to highlight that collaborate with other external boards, committees, and work groups, and why that's significant for the new members. So when you talk about expanding housing resources, our Health, Housing, and Homeless Division has the Council on Homelessness, which part of the newer conversation with them has been the justice population. And that came out of this group, and connecting this group with H3 to remember that there's, special circumstances around those who are re-entering our communities from incarceration. And so that's an important aspect. Measure X is our tax measure. And there are, those monies have largely been allocated, but there is potential for some more allocations. And I know the re-entry did receive some funds from that, but moreover, there's an innovation fund that they just developed how they're going to put together the body that will look at those grants, and they're going to be looking to our advisory bodies for participation in that review panel. So there's different opportunities to reach your goals through that outreach to other external boards. There's also and I know Ozzy knows this because she's on it, there's the Alcohol and Other Drugs Advisory Board, which is also, really aligned with a lot of the things that CAB and the Office of Reentry and Justice is working on as well.
Thank you, Jill. And just to piggyback off of what Jill has just spoken about from my past, and this is a new year, so the Council on Homelessness, they have, I think, meetings maybe once or twice a month. I'm not really sure, but that's something that we can plug into. Also, as Jill spoke, the different community advisory boards for Measure X, which I just found out Measure X had a community advisory board a couple of weeks ago. But there's a lot of other things that are going on in the community that we would like to know about, because, we don't have individuals have the bandwidth to go to all of these things, but to bring back that information and share with us so that we'll be more informative and we can, do different things. And I guess the different things probably would include when you go to these. I know from my experience, I went to the Council on Homelessness, and there was a team, a community-based organization from San Francisco, and how they were tasked with meeting individuals right when they left custody at the jail. They would meet them right there, and they would take them from there to wherever it was that they needed for housing or whatever. They didn't have the individuals didn't have the opportunity to get lost in the shuffle. And I know that sometimes that's really important, being formally incarcerated, having someone there to meet you, having had that conversation prior to, and knowing that you have the resources. So organizations like that, who I consider are boots on the ground, who are meeting people, I would like to hear and see what they're doing and how that's working for them. And other cities, other municipalities can have things that we're not familiar with. So we're tasked to find out different and innovative programs that are working. And Jill, you got your hand up again?
Nope, just didn't put it down. Thanks. Oh, there was one other thing that I was just thinking about too, as far as coordination, and that's with our Mental Health Commission. There's two different bodies that look at justice systems. One is a subcommittee of the Mental Health Commission, and one is a committee created by NAMI, Contra Costa. So, so there's lots of areas out there where these conversations are happening as well.
Absolutely. I think that it might be, I might take this on to find out and make a list, compile a list of other spaces where it's important for our advocacy, the things that we're looking for. I think we're charged with a lot. I think program and services, we can really we can have those moments where we can see things that are working and actually have some input, and then be able to articulate that and within our communities, and the more information we have, the more people we have involved, and we can teach each other. We can expand each other's knowledge by being in those spaces and coming back to report. I know it was really life-changing for me to come on board with CAB. I was able to I've been going to quite a few of the outside meetings, and it's just amazing what you can glean and the people and the network and resources that you can gather. And I'm sure you guys know that, but I'm preaching to the choir. So with this particular initiative, from what I'm hearing is that all of us are going to work toward the goal for this. Each of us has, I know Rena has stated the housing. I know I'm with restorative justice, and
I'm interested in mental health.
Okay. So will we need to include that, Monique?
Yes, so what we'll do is we'll take the ideas from every person. It sounds like we're still going to keep this initiative. And what we'll do is we can keep a lot of the same verbiage, or we can add specifically if someone added something on here. So like I just heard LaTanya mention mental health, which I don't see it on there specifically, but mental health is an issue that we've been talking about for a lot last year, right? So we can add that. So what we'll do is we'll update this if you want to keep advocacy and support of CAB policy platform as an initiative. We'll just update it. And so definitely, I think the conversation is really good to have in this particular format. But if you want to add any additional things, if they aren't spoken here, please email me to add it, and then I'll have an updated draft. So, you know, I'll include what you all have stated now, and then I will add to it or revise the language, and I'll definitely show it to Patrice. And then, and I believe I heard you say that all of you will take part in this responsibility. It won't just be one person.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll update that as well. And the timeline do you all consider it ongoing?
One of the things that I think that would be helpful if that we can have some little speed bumps. I like to call them speed bumps, where we can check back to see how far we, you know, if we're on task, if we're on track, and give a report back. I think, what is it, biannually, every six months?
Okay, we can definitely do that. So I know what another subcommittee did last year. Like they had the timeline, and then below the timeline in red, I'll put I could put the different updates, speed bumps, as far as stating at this point, you know, we've gotten halfway through our goal, right? Or completed. So I know they really wanted to see that, although the items are on there, they wanted to see what progress has been made. And that's what I believe I hear you saying.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have another question, Monique.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
when, I know for me, I didn't always do a report out when I went to the various, when I went to RJOB, I think I did report outs, but some of the things I didn't do report outs on.
Mhm.
We're going to, can we do report outs as far as to kind of like make a note of the places and the things that we've been working on? Can that be part of this?
Yes. So what we'll do is, say for instance, if you or LaTanya wanted to include something in the report out. So Rena is the recorder. And so what Rena and I will do is we'll work together. She's taking notes of highlights of what happened in this meeting. And then I'm taking the minutes, right? The recordings from the minutes. And so what we do is we come together, and she will provide me with the report out document, and then I review it and we talk about what needs to be included. So if the other board members, yourself and LaTanya, want to say, oh, I'd like for this to be included, just simply email me with the information, and then I'll make sure it's included. And then Rena completes the report out, but you actually report out at the CAB general meeting on a monthly basis from this subcommittee.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have another question.
Okay.
So if I have, say, a wish list of things that I would want program and services to kind of focus on, is this the time and the place that we could talk about it?
Yes, I think it should be done at the public meeting here. You know, any person could do that on the committee. You know, any one of you could do that, but I think it should be done publicly. Although, you know, there are other formats, because you, Ozzy, and the other chairs will be attending a meeting that we have monthly, which is an agenda planning meeting. So that means that you'll come to the meeting, and you've been there before. You've stood in place of the other chair that you were a part of. So you could talk about, oh, I think this is what we'd like for this meeting. So it could be done at the agenda planning meeting, but I always think it's very good to do it at this meeting because this is a public meeting and you're just sharing ideas of what, like you said, a wish list, right? With your fellow colleagues, and the public hears from you as a chair or a board member to find out what you'd like to see for programs and services.
Okay, well, that was a soft entry opening. Well, it's kind of like I like to tell the stories. Always a good story. When I first came on board with CAB, I really I want to do the best job that I could do as a board member. And anytime I identify things within myself, I always say, if I'm feeling this way, there's someone else that's feeling this way too. So I have wanted to understand implicit bias and how that and what that looked like, because I understand that we all have those biases. And I think implicit bias is something that is personal and that we each have to kind of go within ourselves to identify what those biases are. And we had those biases for a lot of different reasons. I have those biases coming from a place of abandonment, abuse, and things of that nature. So I've dealt with those issues, but that put me on a pathway of always dealing with anything that comes before me that's not positive. So implicit biases and looking at our surroundings and what we're tasked with as a subcommittee and as a board, community advisory board, and what our purpose is here, why we are here. And we're here because we're overseers of AB 109 funding, which is for the reentry populations. So when you're looking at reentry populations, you're looking at people that have been to jail, to prison, people who have done and offended, who've committed harm to their communities. So when you look at that and you look at people who are dealing with those individuals, you want them to have an even keel, an even board when dealing with them, and their bias is set aside. You know, and one of the things that I wanted to make sure, because we have specific things that we as a board have to do prior to taking the seat, and that's going and doing the Brown Act. We have things that we have to, you know, answer questions, and we're charged with that, and we're sincere, and we're coming here authentically. But what I'm wanting to see is that, you know, we understand what implicit bias is, what it looks like, and that it becomes a part of our processes to say, I'm identifying these biases. I know that I have them, or I don't know, but I'm working toward it because I have a goal, because we have an all-inclusive goal, all of us, and that's for our funding of these reentry populations, people who are homeless, people who have substance abuse issues, people who are dealing with family reunifications. They have mental health challenges, homelessness, and the list goes on. So we want people who are at a stage in their development where they are compassionate, where they are authentic, but we also are charged with evidence-based, you know, and when we're charged with that, we have to make sure that we are the providers and we're providing that service and making people aware of these things that could be hidden and they're not aware of. So to say it simply, I would like to see implicit bias incorporated in CAB, the board, as part of something, our training. I would like that our CBOs have some type of implicit bias training documentation as a requirement for receiving these fundings, you know, so that we know that this evidence-based, that we can go someplace and understand, yes, this person has gone through, made an attempt to acknowledge our imperfections as human beings, because we all are human beings. I say we're spiritual beings having a human experience. But the bottom line is, if we want to, I would like to see it across the board, because it's a part of our training, just to keep us in check, you know, and keep us identifying who we are working for and why we're here. We're here in a role of compassion. You know, we're compassionate beings reaching out to others who can't help themselves or whatever life circumstances they're involved in. So we're stewards. and they changed the verbiage. It was watchdogs, but we're spotlighters. We're shining the light in dark places. And that's what I would like to continue to do with implicit bias training. And I have another item that I would like to see on our working and moving toward, and that is ADA compliance. And this is in the trajectory of one of our pillars, our 5th pillars. And I'm championing Dr. Michelle Hernandez, who was a board member who transitioned last year, year before last in December, who was one of my mentors and whom I didn't even know until way into our, boardship, that she was totally disabled in a wheelchair. And she had no use of any of her limbs or her extremities. But she was a champion. She didn't miss board meetings, and she was there. And if she had to go for a protest, she would get in her chair and she'd get on BART because she was an advocate. She advocated for ADA compliances. And what that would look like for our CBOs is something that might fall in the jurisdiction of HIPAA and other things, but I would like to do some research to find out what waters we can tread without interference and what we can do to make sure our CBOs are actually facilitating individuals who have disabilities, whether they're obvious or not obvious, because sometimes you can't see them. You can't see my disabilities, but I have them. I have a lot of them. You don't see them, but I have them. And a person seeing me wouldn't, when you do 7 miles, how can you have disabilities? I have disabilities that I overcome and you don't see them, but I deal with them, on a daily basis, chronic pain, compromised immune systems, and other things. There are people that can't use their limbs. So that's my other platform that I would like to see us research and see what we can bring to the table as far as ADA compliance is how many of our CBOs who actually have people coming in who are compliant, and what does that compliance look like for them? So I might be going down a rabbit hole, but I got my carrots with me. Anyone have any questions or input or conversations? LaTanya, what do you think about either of those two items?
The bias training, I am totally in agreement with it. I think we do need to have compassion. I think we do need to make sure that we have the skills and that the people that we are using as resources have the necessary trainings to be able to handle and hold space for those that are coming out of the prison who don't have someone that believes in them and have the support to give them hope, so that people are not re-entering back into prison because they don't have the correct support system outside to help them, transition from, being in jail to now back into life. So I think it's very important. I think we should hold those accountable that we're using as resources that we are providing. We're referring them to other people. If they're not qualified, then we should look at additional resources or ask that they have the necessary trainings to support what we're asking them to do.
Thank you, LaTanya.
I agree. I completely agree with what both of you guys said. Yeah, I'm sorry, my voice is kind of going in and out, so I'm going to keep it short, but yeah, no, I agree.
So Ozzy, what we can do is we can add those things to the work plan, either in an existing section or we can create a new section. So, I will definitely review the recording and see how to incorporate it, and then work with Patrice in the office to see what's appropriate. And then obviously we could, I can show you a draft either at the agenda planning meeting prior to the next meeting, or we can bring the draft back at the next meeting. And obviously I would post it with the updates, and, we can continue to work on updating it. Because it seems like the three of you have agreed that those items are important and they should be an initiative on the work plan. And we just need to find out if we have a section that already exists or we will create a new section.
Sounds like a plan. Teamwork makes the dream work.
That's right. So I'm gonna go back to up a little bit. I came down too far.
So this next item, conduct survey of program service needs and present findings, government and CBOs. So this is something that's done yearly.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And as we move to the subtask and benchmarks, programs and services qualitative survey. Qualitative meaning numeric numbers, statistics, data. So develop the survey. So we develop the survey.
Yes, we do. Your committee does develop the survey, and it's in a public meeting like this. So what you're doing is all of you, along with the public that's present, the public can make comments to, like, you would come up with a survey and you would say what the needs are, and then everyone chimes in, and then eventually you come up with a working survey that will be presented to a group of agencies. And we definitely have last year's survey, which was done very well and well received. And you can, just like you're doing with this work plan, you're looking at what existed last year, and you're going to either update, make changes. We can do the same thing with the actual survey. We can look at the survey from last year, and if you want to just do a brand new survey from scratch, or use what's on that survey and or if you want to reach out to a new group of individuals or agencies other than what we used last year. But yes, you do develop the survey.
So Monique, what I heard you say is what I want to understand. All of our CBOs didn't receive the survey. Is that what I heard you say?
I believe all of them received it, and as well as other agencies, but you don't always get the responses back from everyone, right? So I think we received, and I don't want to misquote it, maybe 9 to 11 responses or 17. And so you take what the responses are, and then you started compiling the data. But yes, all CBOs likely received it, as well as other agencies. But what was determining is that who responded to the survey.
In other words, the survey is not a requirement.
No, it's not mandatory that they respond to the survey. That is correct.
My other question would be, what is the time frame from how much time do we have to initiate the survey? The timeline. When do we start? When do we have to send it out? And when do we give them a time frame for returning the survey? So what is the time span? What does that look like?
We do. So looking at this work plan here, it looks like the committee agreed that the survey should be finalized by April. So it doesn't have step by step what was done, although I could go back and see when it was sent out. So if it's done by April, I would think that they probably would have started like in February. So February, March, and April. And then May responses, a 2-week response period. So they allowed people to respond within 2 weeks in the month of May. And then they determined that they should have their findings by June. So that's what it looks like happened last year. And this can be changed. You could adopt that same pattern, or you could change it. But I do think that by June or July, you do want to have your findings, because the reason for the findings is you want to be able to implement some of the responses from the survey, right? You want to be able to submit it to the CCP and maybe the PPC and maybe the Board of Supervisors, depending on what's on the survey. You want to be able to share it with the other bodies so that the work can start or be introduced. So yes. And Jill, I think Jill has her hand raised. She could probably elaborate more on that.
Yeah, I do. So the survey is an integral part of the CAB's budget building process. And so that it's to determine where the gaps are in the system, and then CAB would make their recommendations to the CCP as to where they feel the funding should go. And so that's why it starts early. Our county budget it's a fiscal year, so it ends June 30th and it begins July 1st. So what you're doing is building information to make your recommendations for the next fiscal year, which would be, well, right now we're in 22, 23, so it would be to build 23, well, no, right now we're building 23, 24. So those, and Ozzy, you'll remember this because the budgets requests from the county administrator's office come to CAB and the rest of the agencies in, I think, early October. So that's when they start building the budgets. The budget hearings at the Board of Supervisors are in April, and that's for the following fiscal year. So that's where you back up and figure out when the survey needs to go out so that you can compile the information and have your recommendations to CAB in time so that CAB can then make recommendations to the Community Corrections Partnership at their, I can't remember, Monique, what is it, October meeting or November is when they do their first budget review. So you would want to have that ready for the CCP at the first opportunity prior to November.
Thank you for that, Jill. That means we have to get busy sooner than later.
Well, and you also time it so that it can be announced at the Community Corrections Partnership, because Isa Emmon-Krause has been a huge supporter of CAB and the efforts, and she announced it several times. And that's why I think you saw an increased response rate from our county partners, from the county agencies, because she pushed to make sure everybody returned those surveys.
Thank you. We needed to hear that we have advocacy. So we have to be timely. And of course, we will be timely. Shayla, do you have something to add?
No, nothing to add. I think it's really good, especially for your first meeting. You guys are covering a lot, so that's great.
Okay, I accept that as a compliment. Thank you. One of my mentors. So I guess the next thing we're going to so are there any questions? Let's go back to the questions about the survey. Do you have any questions, Rena or LaTanya?
Not really. LaTanya, you're on mute still.
So will we start working on the survey at our next meeting, where we can actually review the previous year to see if we want to build on it or to build one from scratch? Or do we do that?
No, we can certainly add that as a next step to look at review the survey. We can definitely do that as a next step.
Okay.
Thank you, LaTanya. So moving on to promote a comprehensive needs assessment. Program and services qualitative data collection. Conduct qualitative interviews with providers as needed, post-survey findings. Analyze, present CAB with findings, recommendations as related to budget, funds allocations, program success, challenges, and etc. And also look at local and regional needs assessment to reentry. And I see some dates here. Oh, provide findings to policy and budget subcommittee. Survey local cabs, example, San Francisco, Alameda. Provide findings to policy and budget subcommittee. So this is asking us to conduct qualitative interviews with providers as needed post-survey findings. So this is something that's supposed to be done before the surveys?
After, it looks like, after the
Post, it's
survey.
after.
So,
Yeah.
but I can add a little bit of context to this. So basically, I know last year this was not completely done. It was one thing, because Nicole Popchak and I had attended some of the meetings just to bring feedback to the CAB about other meetings that we attended. Alameda County has a community advisory board, as well as San Francisco, and they don't, all of the boards do not look the same. You know, they're charged with different things, but we were able to bring back ideas. And some of the members also, I believe, attended some meetings. So it really is up to you if you want to continue with this and if you want to make changes. But that's kind of what was happening with the with this particular initiative. And even as Jill talked about the budget proposal, so if you look at the timeline, it talks about in time for inclusion in the CAB's policy brief, which CAB does a policy brief to CCP, and also, you know, it's basically the work that you all are doing. So you would want to include that work in the policy brief, and then also possibly in the budget proposal if it has a fiscal impact.
So Monique, you were saying that last year, so were there qualitative interviews with providers actually sitting down with our CBOs?
No.
No.
It was a discussion that was had many times of doing it, but it was never actually done. To my knowledge. I mean, we definitely can check with Crawford to see if something was done in another subcommittee, but I don't believe it happened at all. And I think Jill has her hand raised. She might be able to elaborate on this as well.
Yeah, in the past, the CAB has had the contracted CBOs come and sort of give an overview of their program, and in preparation for the budget hearings, just to get an idea and like where they are, what their ask is, what their needs are. And so it was just select programs that were asked. It wasn't every single program because you wouldn't have the bandwidth for that. So so that was the general gist of that.
Thank you, Jill. You're right, because I know Centerforce came and spoke to CAB. And so, yes, different CBOs would come and provide an update.
So definitely that would be something that we would want to include, to have to be able to hear from our CBOs as far as their challenges or needs, or even the successes that they're having.
And Ozzy, I just want to give you a time check. It's 12:16. You guys are doing great on time, but I just wanted to provide that information.
Okay, thank you. So Latanya and Rena, is this particular item something that we're going to continue with?
I
Any
think so.
input?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important to meet with and have presentations done by people who are doing the work and everything. It's important.
Absolutely. Latanya?
I agree. I think it's important that we hold people accountable and that we look at areas that we may need to improve communication or to hold standards, but definitely hold every person accountable for their part in this.
I agree. Thank you. So it's safe to say that we'll continue this process and with all members involved. And with that being said, we can move to our next item, which is our next steps.
And so Ozzy, as far as the work plan, what I'll do is I'll incorporate some of the feedback from today's meeting. And then I can share it with you at the agenda planning. And then I could also, once you talk to me about your items for the next next agenda to be posted, then we'll have an updated version of the work plan, which is very similar to the one we had last year, but it will incorporate some ideas of the discussion from today. So that'll be on next steps. And I think I heard someone mention the survey. Latanya asked for the survey. So that definitely will be a next step to review the survey and see what was done last year. And if you want to modify it, just like you're doing with the work plan. So we have those two next steps at this point.
I might, if I could just jump in real quick rather than raise my hand, I also might suggest that that perhaps this group review the current CBOs contracted with AB 109 funds, because everybody may not be aware of that, and there might be questions or more that leads to discussion based on that.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Jill.
And that's why I said earlier that this committee and policy and budget often intersect. You do a lot of the same or similar work, or you're able to help one another by collaborating and reviewing things. So yes, I agree.
I have a question, but it's not really a next action step. In regards to the bias training, are we going to provide them that information, or will we leave every organization responsible for looking at bias training? Or do we want to look at one to make sure it meets our requirement standard of what we're looking for them to be taught and know?
Well, that's a great question, Latanya. One of the things that I had been working toward was to have a presentation. And where every board member, I know we all have an understanding of what implicit bias is, but actually to have someone who is articulate, someone that does the work, to do a presentation so that we can see how implicit biases impacts us as a board and as our CBOs in that particular environment. So that's something that's upcoming. Am I at liberty to disclose?
Yes, go ahead. Because it's been approved, right?
Thank you. I tell you, you're driving this plane. I'm just a passenger today. Okay, so I had this is another story. All last year, I was trying to find individuals who were doing implicit bias training. Monique really helped me a lot. The county was offering a training. We had some individuals who had participated, and I found an organization that did implicit bias. And after waiting 6 or 7 weeks until we could finally meet, it didn't work out for that particular organization. But I did happen to come into contact with another organization. I actually attended an event this last Saturday that was in West County. It was a mental health forum that was wonderful. And I found an organization, Community Village. The founder is Tanya Jacobs, and her one of her constituents, part of her cohort, they're going to do a presentation for the board. And that's going to be our March 9th board CAB meeting. And we'll get that getting the ball rolling to kind of like really educate everyone on implicit bias and what it looks like. And then from there, we can have a more in-depth conversation as to how we'll move forward. Because at this juncture, I don't really know whether or not the county has revamped their implicit bias training and what it would look like for us as a board, even what it would look like for CBO. It's a lot of more research that needs to be done, a lot of more questions that need to be answered. So we're in the process of opening up this trajectory to see where we are going with implicit bias.
Okay.
I hope I answered the question.
Yes. Were you at the event at the Richmond Auditorium this Saturday?
Yes, I was.
I was too.
Oh, fantastic. I was there. Yes. So that's what's on our agenda for the 9th as far as implicit bias. And anyone else that might have information about implicit bias training or things that are available, feel free to make that information known or shared if you'd like. It would be much appreciated. So that's part of one of our next steps. Anything else? Well, if there's nothing else, I guess looking at the time, I want to check with Monique. Are we on target?
We are. You all did a great job, and I appreciate Jill and Shayla providing input as well, and our other guests for attending. So yeah, you can adjourn if there's nothing else, and it looks like it's 12:24. So we have like 6 minutes to spare, right? To give back to folks.
Fantastic. Thank you all for participating. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend.
Thank you, Ozzy.
Thank you.
Great job.
Bye.
Thank you, Pedro and Tiani, for attending. We look forward to
Thank you for having us.
And thank you, Shayla and Miss Jill, for making your presence. We appreciate you.
Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day and weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Great job, Ozzy.
Woo, I made it.